Okay, we are on SBAC presentation. What?
You were the second on that, correct?
I was, yes.
Alright, so we will get away here. I'd like to thank Mrs. Sherman and Mrs. Briscoe to present this and put this together. Get out of the way here.
Oh, that's your clicker. It's your clicker. Now you got that, or were you gonna?
No.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
That's the clicker.
Yes.
Okay,
Hello,
ready.
everybody.
You ready? Ready.
So thank you for allowing me this opportunity to share with you some of our Smarter Balance results. This presentation is going to just be around achievement. I won't be sharing growth or accountability reports at this time, which is what we typically do every year. And just a reminder that these results are based off of the tests that the students took last May. And usually during this presentation I share with you our CMT science results, but that test no longer exists. Last year our 5th graders, who are the ones that take the science test, took the Next Generation Science Standards pilot test. That's a mouthful. And so we don't actually have results on that. We are only going to get reported out on participation. So there's no results for that for you tonight. It helps if I turn my clicker on. So this slide just presents an overview of what the Smarter Balanced assessments are. And I just want to point out that it is a computer adaptive test. Most of you know what that means, but it just means that it adapts as the students get questions correct or incorrect. And a couple years ago, there was both an English language arts and a mathematics performance task, but the English language arts performance task was eliminated a couple of years ago. I know that's a question that sometimes comes up. There are 4 skill areas measured in English language arts. They're listed here for you, and they're all aligned to the Common Core state standards. On the report that parents get mailed home, they do lump together the writing and the research inquiry into one score. So it's reading, writing, research inquiry, and listening. So they have 3 that they're scored upon. Let me know if I'm going too quickly. So we often report out, and we're going to do that tonight, on achievement levels. We talk about the students who are at level 3 or above on the SBA assessments for English language arts and mathematics. We're going to do that again, like I said, but it's really important to note that the range within those achievement levels is really, really broad. So for example, a student who is in grade 3 taking the mathematics assessment, scoring at a level 4, the average vertical scale score for that level 4 range is 2501 to 2621. So that's a span of 120 points. So I'm just mentioning that to keep in mind as you're looking at the data in the coming slides, because the vertical scale score is just a more precise measure of student growth, and it's we get the average vertical scale scores, which I'll be sharing out with you, as well as the achievement levels. So I just want to make sure we're taking a look at both of that pieces of data. And of course, we always want our students to grow, and we always want them to move up into that level 3 and 4 range. I like to show you a sample question so you know what our little people are looking at. This is an English language arts sample question. You'll see on the left-hand side of the screen is the paragraph that the students have to read. There's often a scroll bar on that paragraph too, so they have to navigate that. There's tools within that paragraph embedded to help them, so there's usually a highlighter tool and a notepad if they wanted to take notes. And then the right-hand side of the screen is the question. So the question at the top of the screen there is one where they have to click within that paragraph to find the correct answer. And then the question below that, number 11, that you're getting a little piece of is a open-ended question where they have to click within the box and then type their response. So there's a lot happening on the screen. So these are our English Language Arts results for all of our students. Just to make sense of this slide for you, on the left-hand side are, as I mentioned, the percent of students scoring at level 3 and above. You'll notice that it's broken out into 3 different years, 15, 16, all the way to 17, 18, which was our most recent results. And then on the right-hand side of the screen is the average vertical scale score. I highlighted the cohorts in a color so you can track one group of students across multiple years. But I wanted to mention that that's not a matched cohort, so it's not a one-to-one. So we have students that move in and out of district, and they're all lumped together in one grade level. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. So every cohort has its own unique characteristics. You'll notice our third graders, when they took this test most recently in 2017-18, they were scoring at 74% at level 3 and above. So this is really just a baseline for us. This is the first time those third graders have seen this assessment. It's their first experience taking an assessment of this breadth and depth on the computer. If you look at the pink cohort, the 2016-2017 third graders, they had a slight increase of 4 percentage points in 2017 to 2018. So they went from 74% to 78%. Same with our fourth graders to fifth graders. They went from 72 to 80%. And our fifth to sixth graders had a slight decline from 71 to 68%. But you'll notice, as I was pointing out earlier, the average vertical scale score for all of our cohorts actually increased slightly.
And how does this compare with how other schools did? Okie dokie then. I'll just stop asking.
Drink your the later slides.
Okay, never mind.
So, do you want us to ask questions at the end?
Either way is fine.
I hope it's not coming up in a slide though, if you ask a
That's
question.
true. See, I mean, you did just tell Margaret that it might be
Well,
coming.
my question's not on the slide.
Yeah.
but I'll ask
Question's
it.
on the
The answer's not coming.
So this is that exact same information that you just saw presented in a graph form. So you'll notice it's the grade level, grade 3 is at the top, grade 6 is at the bottom of that bar graph, and blue and green is levels 3 and 4 respectively. And it's, I already said it's broken out by grade. And this is all of our students grouped together, again, just graphically for English Language Arts. So I'm going to move into the area of mathematics now. So again, there's 4 skill areas in mathematics that are assessed, all aligned to the Common Core state standards. Problem solving and modeling and data analysis are the 2 that are lumped together this time. So concepts and procedures, communicating, reasoning are separate, and then problem solving and modeling and data analysis are together. This is a sample question for math. You'll notice there's a lot of numbers and symbols on the screen for students to sort of navigate with to answer their questions. So this is the same information that you saw on the English Language Arts slide. So our percentages of students scoring at level 3 and above are on the left, average vertical scale scores on the right, cohorts are color-coded. So these results don't really represent the outcomes that we had anticipated. You'll notice that our 5th graders in particular, that is an area that we know that we need to work on. We do have some action steps in mind for them. First and most importantly, some additional or some curriculum work with 5th grade this year. They will be working on their math curriculum this whole year as other grade levels have done in the past. Our 3rd graders this past year, as you can see, they had 72%. So again, that's their baseline. A slight decline in our pink cohort from 3rd to 4th, 77 to 74. Our 4th to 5th grade students had the biggest decline, 78 to 64%, where our 5th to 6th graders actually had a pretty significant increase, about 16% increase from 55% to 71%. But our average vertical scale scores, as you can see, are increasing. So again, this is that same information presented visually for you. So blues and greens represent level 3 and 4. Grade 3 is at the top and grade 6 is at the bottom.
Are these bar graphs just a single year?
Yes, that's just this
This
past
past
year.
year.
Yep. And those are all of our students together for math. So these are our overall results within our district reference group and within the state of Connecticut for the last 3 years, 2016, 2017, and then 2018. You'll notice that there's a different district count. Maybe you didn't notice. I'll point out to you that there's a different district count. As we were looking at this information, we actually noticed that there were some districts added. One example that we found was the Stamford Charter School District for Excellence. They have a whopping 49 students in their district, we discovered. And their percentage points are quite high. So they were at 81.6 for ELA and 93.9 for math. So that's why the district number is a little bit different. So last year, the administrative team had a year of transition. There was a lot of time as an administrative team spent on management of the building as we set up some new structures and talked about had some conversations around changes we were going to make for this upcoming year. Most of these you already know about. We hired a new .5 support resource teacher. We have a new resource room to support some of our students. So we're already making some moves so that we as an administrative team can focus on some of our goals around feedback and around communication. Another one of our goals is really to make sure that we're in classrooms a lot more and focusing on feedback and instructional support of teachers, which kind of leads me into my next slide. So some of our follow-up and next steps moving forward. As I mentioned, feedback and coaching within all of the classrooms and at PLC meetings. We also wanted to take a look at some of our schools within our DIRG a little bit more closely. We've had a number of schools come and visit us to learn from us, and we were talking as an administrative team about how we might want to start exploring a little bit more reciprocal relationships and maybe going to visit other schools. We know, for example, Trumbull is a district that consistently performs well, and so that might be a district that we go and visit or have conversations with them about the work that they're doing within their district. We also are not a district that spends an inordinate amount of time on test preparation. That's not something that we have believed in philosophically. But it's conversations that we are starting to sort of step back and reflect upon and think about making sure that we're not giving our students a disadvantage by not spending more time doing some test prep. So those conversations are sort of ones that we are beginning to have as an administrative team and as a collective community. Time for questions. Go ahead, Steve.
So obviously I'm totally bummed out, to be honest, by these scores. I mean, when I started on the board, we were always in the top 3 of our DIRG in performance on standardized tests, and in math in particular, seeing some of the lower scores really bugs me, because I know we've done away with some math resources because of these privacy rules, and I don't know if that impacts things, but it just seems that we, I don't know, it's just, I'm a little bummed out. And I guess, as far as coaching in math, when we look at these results, are there specific areas or domains that we are not getting at, or is it across the board we're just not performing well? Or are there very specific areas within the domains of the curriculum that are not being addressed?
So I think that the coaching question is a little challenging to answer only because coaching is really unique to each teacher and really revolves a lot around conversations around that teacher's particular class and sort of the needs that they're encountering in that particular school year. So I don't know how easy it would be to draw a straight line between coaching and SBAC. Maybe that's a conversation that we have to have as an administrative team. Like maybe our coaching should be more around targeted work like this. So that might be some of the conversation that we have administratively and with Maureen Krawick and Jean Malo, our two math specialists. So I guess that's sort of a work in progress, that part of it. In terms of the math, like I said, we know that there's work that needs to be done. Grade 5 needs some work. We know that. That's why this year they're going to be working with ACES. Tomorrow is actually their first day, sort of taking a look at their curriculum and diving into the work and the resources that we do have and how are we using them and building our curriculum templates, which is work that grade 3 and grade 4 has already done. And grade 2 has done some of that also. And grade 1 actually. So grade 5 is sort of our next area to hit it and hit that curriculum hard and work on that all year long. I'm not sure I answered your
Did you
question.
have another question?
I have two
Okay.
other. So one is,
Oh.
I would hate for us to move into this, test prep school,
Right.
which we have never done before, and we've always said we're not going to do. And I would point to the fact that we've done SBACs for a few years, and we didn't do test prep to begin with, and our grades have gone down. So I'm not sure that teaching the test itself is the answer to the shortfall in the, the scores. I'm sure.
Wait, can I say one more thing? I just remembered Gina reminded me of. So one of the resources that we have as a school district the state puts out is called IABs. They're interim assessment blocks. So they're short, computer-based assessments tied to specific strands. So in mathematics, for example, there would be a fractions one, there would be a decimals one, there would be a whole number and operations one, all different ones. In language arts, there's editing and revising, there's a revision one, there's several different ones. A couple years ago, we started talking about how we wanted to best use them. And they are modeled after SBAs. So the question types are similar, and the interactions on the screen are similar. So a couple years ago, we started talking about how we wanted to use those. Again, philosophically, as a district, we didn't want our teachers doing these all year long and sort of bombarding our students with these all year long. But last year, we started shifting into giving them the opportunity to view them on the screen and practice one on their own so that they had exposure to the types of questions. One of the things that we learned is, just as I pointed out on the screen, all those tools that are available to them, students struggled even 2 years ago. I had to reset the entire 6th grade SBAC assessments for language arts because they didn't understand that they had to scroll to see the rest of a table. And so they all answered the question incorrectly. And it was only like one kid in one class who said, oh my gosh, you have to scroll and now you can see the whole table and get all the information you need to answer a question, which sounds so simplistic, but the way the assessment is set up on a screen for our children, giving them that opportunity to experience it through the use of the IABs is something that we're starting to talk about again more and give them more opportunity. So last year, I think that they modeled one on the screen, the teacher modeled one on the screen, and then I think the students had the opportunity to do 2 more on their own and interact with the tools and see the kinds of questions and have conversations about what the language even meant and what the question was asking. So that's another thing that we're starting to sort of have conversations about, is how best to use those IABs within our current curriculum.
I remember my other quick thing was, so we've invested in STAR testing. Have we correlated? I mean, did we expect these results based on our STAR tests? And does the STAR test correlate?
Yep.
Because we're doing that more frequently, and we should be able to pick up on where kids are not.
Yep.
So
we actually took a quick look at that just recently. Gina and I were taking a quick look at that, and there is a report on STAR that you can run that correlates to specific, there's one report that you can run that correlates to the standards that are being covered, and one that correlates to the SBA assessment. And what we discovered actually is that it was like 2 percentage points off. It was pretty accurately correlated. We were not able to look at 6th graders because the data had already rolled over from last year, so we couldn't look at last year's 6th graders. So we looked at 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And what we noticed, there was, I think, one grade
Five
level.
out of 6 areas.
Five out
So
of-
3
right.
math, 3 language arts, 5 out of 6 areas were within about 3%
Right.
correlation. The difference is, so for the universal screen for STAR, you can, it's not, everything isn't assessed all the time.
Right.
So you can get an idea of individual students as we're looking at students who might not be at the 3s or at the 4s. Looking at those students, classroom teachers have the ability to look at those students and see the areas either by the state standards. So it's listed as good first instruction, they taught it, they got it. These students are projected possibly to need a little more support. These students are projected in this domain may need, even after you teach it and give them support, they still may struggle. So that report is available to teachers, but that correlation right now is about 3%.
So, and our internal assessments that we do as well, is the correlation the same that we see with our internal testing, that we've got, kids that are not grasping, this particular part of a math curriculum or something? Because that speaks a little bit to, it's not that they don't get the test, it's not like they don't get the little icons and stuff. I mean, if it's correlating with everything else, then it's not the mechanics of the test, it's the material of the test. So I don't know if we've looked at some of the internal measures we use as well, especially in reading and writing, maybe, because I think we do those assessments, throughout the year, again, to say, we expected this, or, we saw that this was, potentially the direction that things were going.
I think it's a little harder for our, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's a little bit more challenging to draw a correlation between our in-school assessments and SBA. I mean, that would be, you would have to do a huge correlational study. I mean, you'd have to look at lots and lots of data. But I will say that generally speaking, when we think about our students and we talk about our students, we look at our in-school assessments, we look at our universal screens, we look at our SBA data, we kind of look at all of it holistically and look for where the areas of need are. So a child might struggle on a reading assessment, but do really, really well on the STAR reading assessment, but it doesn't mean we won't say, like what's going on? He did really well here, but not so well here, so let's take a closer look at that. And that's really work that happens within grade level PLC teams and also within the larger SERBI process, our scientifically researched, our intervention process.
Students who are receiving intervention.
Right.
So I guess the question is, some of the names, when we drill deeper, these are not names that are a shocker to us. That
Right.
we are providing some support. Do we need more support for these students? What are we not getting at for the names that are in that red and yellow?
And I should know this, but I don't. Is STAR adaptive?
Yes.
It is.
Yes.
STAR is a
All right.
computer adaptive assessment as well.
Okay, and so I know when we got these results, I think in the, maybe the last meeting last year, when we had some initial feedback, the state trends matched, or we matched the state trends, so that, like as in general, the state went down in, this particular thing. And I know we talked a little bit about our ability to look at the test, see how it's changing, see if the test itself is, changes in the structure of the test or the material in the test or the content is changing, and that's also affecting where things are going. If the entire state trends one way, did everybody just, not learn something as well, or did something change about what questions were asked and how they were asked and those things. And I don't know, I mean, I'm not saying that we have any ability to affect that, but is what's happening here, and I know it's not happening in every, DIRG, but, or every school in our DIRG, but, that was something that was mentioned last year, is that we were seeing a match to the state trends. Is that, like,
And that was
everybody did worse?
And that was
on
part of the
something?
growth patterns, that was from the accountability report.
Right.
So that was.
2 years ago. Or-
Well,
I'm
this past, I think this past spring when we,
Oh.
because we see results in two different
That's the other
ways,
one.
two different times
That's
of
the
the
other
year.
report.
And the growth was just recently released and we were not able to assimilate it into this point, so we'll be seeing that at a certain point along the way, again, as you normally do, which is what you're related to. And yes, we were mirroring for the most part what the state growth was like. We don't know yet if we're gonna mirror that again, if we're gonna be any different than that.
And again,
That'll be when that's the accountability, when that one
and is
comes
that
out
when we
with
see the gaps between the?
Yes, that's
Yes.
when the achievement gap is spoken about,
Yep.
that's
Yep.
correct. Yeah.
All right, so, and
That's the next one.
when does, what? Oh, you have, oh, I'm sorry, Todd, you had a question?
Are we able to see into the numbers a little bit more and how we perform against our DIRG and in the state in exceeded met, approaching not met? I think that those numbers would be really helpful because it will help guide the board and I think also administrators and teachers about which areas of students really need some additional help as well. So if our not met is high compared to our DIRG, then clearly we need to be emphasizing some resources. I think we always should be, but if we're not exceeding at the same rate, then there's also things that take place there. I think that'd be really helpful to see inside of those numbers how we're performing at those levels.
I think we get that when we do the growth. Isn't that where we?
So our growth is,
There's another presentation that's more specific to growth, so you can see patterns of kids who are in like the lowest performing, when they were in the lowest last year, where did they go the next year? And people at the top, where did they go the following year? And we have a much more detailed presentation.
did they meet their growth targets? So if a child is performing, and I'll make these numbers up, at a scale score of 2,500 and their anticipated growth rate is they needed to meet 2,560. Did that child meet his growth target? Because someone who's performing at 2,600, and their growth target might be 2,680. And so we get a percentage, and we share that out with you of how many of our students met their individual growth target.
Could we jump to a bar graph in just a moment, for just a moment? So what I'm suggesting is sort of, let's say we look at our DIRG comparatively for third grade. And for third grade, that looks like about, 12%, 13% of our students are not meeting goal. If the DIRG is only 5% not meeting goal, that is fairly informative for us. If the approaching is that another probably 14-15%, looking at comparative to our DIRG will be helpful as well. In addition to what's happening at those individual benchmark targets.
So you're thinking about achievement percentages for our DIRG broken out by grade level and subject.
Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
Gotcha. I don't have that right now.
And by performance level, are we able to look at other districts, the level ones, level twos? I don't know if we can dig in.
That deeply.
I don't know if we can dig into other districts, level one, level two. We get overall, because that's publicly released information.
I'd have to check to see if we just can get level 3, level 4. There's some information that's public on a website that everybody can access, anybody can access. And then there's information that's unique just to our district. So I don't know if we can get to level 1 and I don't know if we can get down that detailed in
For
other
another district.
districts. I'd have to check on the public website. So I can check though. I understand what you're asking, I just have to determine if I can actually get it for you.
So, I think something that I'd be looking for, to have, another session on SBACs is if you do, look at other districts and say, this is something they've seen as effective. If you look at our correlation with, say, STAR and other things, and are like, okay, those correlate, so it's maybe not that we're not training kids for the test. Or maybe it is, maybe we're not training them enough for STAR or for SBACs, and CMTs were a different format, and, and also, just maybe as you're developing the plans, the action plans in terms of what you're looking at in curriculum, or again, some of it is, implementing the curriculum that you've developed that you think is going to answer, some of this, timeframes, what we think, that impact might have this, for this year, and really just, I guess, a little more detail about, what are we trying to do? And again, nobody thinks one assessment is the only thing that we should be looking at, or that we should judge ourselves completely, by one assessment or two assessments or anything else. But it is a factor in how we're ranked, when we get the accountability thing. It has an impact on, on things, whether we want it to or not. So I would like to maybe revisit the SBACs, maybe not waiting for the accountability thing, or just, when you feel like you've got, some details about where you're going, or things that you think are going to really impact, what we're doing, bring that back to us and say, the things where we see problems, our math curriculum changes, it's all in there. It's all there. We just have to get it implemented across the board, and we will be addressing the areas of concern. That would be something I'd be looking forward to, maybe, I have no clue, obviously, when the accountability thing comes out. When is that?
Generally February, March.
Okay.
And so we're hoping that this year, they seem to be moving the timeline a little earlier on a lot of the data, now that this is becoming a regular routine in the new assessment. So, and I will, knowing that, there are obvious relationships between just what we saw tonight and what we see in an accountability report. I think we're anticipating that the growth is going to be, as I characterize what we saw tonight, as flat results, very flat results. Moving down or upward, even up by 1 or 2 points is not great, and down by 1 or 2 points from the previous year, whatever it might be, it's flat results. It was disappointing to us. In some ways, not surprising, seeing some of the names, as you know, and follow individual stories, but it's something that it's right in the front for us in terms of working towards. And for instance, even the strategic move this year of saying, okay, we know 5th grade is a pivotal year for curriculum development this year, and we're going to actually front load the curriculum work so that teachers can get that work done, feel comfortable with it before they actually implement the unit. That's one of the strategies we're trying to accomplish this year with that grade level. So, but we will come back, and we will definitely have more.
I think Steve has a question.
I just have one more quick question, and I know you can't tell us this, but I assume at some level you are looking classroom by classroom to make sure that there's not a significant issue, because again, we only have 840 kids, there's only 100 kids in any single class. If one classroom is having an issue, we're doomed. Mm-hmm. The average is going to drop significantly. So I know you can't tell me if you have, but I just want to make sure that that is something that is looked at very closely, and we're watching to make sure that every class across the board is showing improvement.
So one of the things that we do is that we give teachers the class of students that they had when the students took the test last year. So they're students that took the test, and then we also build rosters of the students that are sitting in front of them right now, which is a whole different group of kids, obviously, so that they have an opportunity to see, here's how my kids did last year, here's how the kids who were in front of me did last year, so I can already know, going into this year, here are some areas that they need to work on. So we do, and we take a look at that collectively as well, but we also give that to the grade level teachers, so they have that information.
So the other thing that I would say is, because everybody's in, preparing budget mode, and I know we've talked about the fact that we don't have, curriculum resources like some other districts do. If there are things that we think are critical, what you...
Oh, no, I've been trying to talk for a while.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's okay,
You go
I'm
ahead.
in a
You
weird
go ahead.
spot, so.
Yeah, okay.
But
Steve, you're supposed
we've
to
talked
tell
about
me.
it before, and I certainly don't want to discount, because I know so much work goes into curriculum development. But we don't have a curriculum director, as we've all talked about, and even just talking to someone from Orange Board of Ed a few weeks ago, and her jaw dropped. She's like, "You don't have a curriculum director?" And, again, there's so much time and energy that goes into it, but coming from folks that are already doing so much time and energy on so many other things. So I don't know if that's just something to put out there and think, is this, maybe it's not, maybe the accountability report will have better information, something to think about. Again, is a curriculum director a good idea? And I don't know, that's kind of just something that seems like it could help impact these in a positive way, because we don't know what we don't know. We already have so many people doing wonderful work in so many other areas. And, there's only so much energy you can exert. So I don't know if that's something to...
Right, and I think we're still in the possibility stage of the budget, so I think we should, look at what are the components of your action plan and what would help? What would move it quicker? What are you sure of in terms of what needs to be done to make a difference? And then, do you have the resources to make that happen? Which I think is also what Megan said. And Lynn, did you have something?
No, that was.
You were just
We
helping
were-
Megan. Okay.
We were.
You were making a sign?
Curriculum,
Hold it
curriculum.
up. All right, I'm sorry.
That's
Okay.
okay.
Did anybody have any other questions?
I would just like to say that first of all, I think all the questions are fair questions tonight. I think that, again, we're not pleased at the results that we're presenting. And it's nothing that we only want to see it go like this. And I also appreciate the commentary from the board, Megan, and I know some other comments around about, what can help you? Because the dilemma of the one large school district is that your building administrators are not just running a very complex, huge school that is growing, unlike most places, but also they're doing many of the district functions that in other districts have those different positions available. And so while I'm very grateful for the presentation that's been put together here, it's not just the presentation and the interpretation of results, it's also Lisa is the math point person from our administrative team. And even though we bring someone from ACES in, no, that's not. We bring in a consultant.
I was gonna hire
The consultant is responsible for guiding the team through the curriculum development process. But the consultant at the end of the day leaves,
Right.
and Lisa's there to answer the question the next day, and the next day after that, and the next week. So just in short, I appreciate that those comments. They're fair, and actually they're other districts have that position, you're right.
But not to play devil's advocate, but for 10 years we haven't had a curriculum director, and we were 1 to 2 in the DIRG for a very long time.
Common Core
So-
shifted though.
Huh?
The Common Core shift, I think has been huge for
And we-
Woodbridge.
and
And I
we-
wasn't here, this is only my 4th year, but I'll say that the conversations and the work that we're doing now to develop our curriculum documents are making a big difference in our teachers and in their learning and in their understanding of the Common Core. So I think 10 years ago, right, we didn't have a curriculum director, and 10 years later we still don't, but the difference between 10 years ago and now is that then it was CMTs and now it's Common Core, which is far more rigorous. The Common Core standards are far more rigorous than
Well, we started out better 3 years ago. I'm not.
started what out.
We started out, our SBAC scores were better 3 years ago.
And we're not,
Yeah.
we don't want to, we as a team have committed ourselves,
Yeah.
we're not going to make excuses about anything here. But there are data points that help us,
Yeah.
and then there's also questions that we can answer. One of the data points we've seen is not just a growing enrollment, but a growing special education enrollment from
Right.
10 to 11 to 12% over 3 years as well. Now doesn't mean that's the cause of this at all, but how does that play into this as well?
Right.
We see this place is attracting people coming in, and which is a good storyline, but it's also attracting many needs that we don't anticipate from year to year. So how does that play into the numbers? Differently than other places or not differently? I don't know, but we don't. So at any rate, I agree, Steve. We want to see reverse the trajectory.
Sorry.
Yeah, so, and if the administration feels that that's a discussion that you would bring to the curriculum committee for some more in-depth discussion, I think that would be a great topic for us.
Well, and I think what you had mentioned earlier, looking at, where within this single score, where are we, like, are we doing 10% in one area and 99% in another, and something's dragging us down? When we had CMTs, we all just said, like, the way those tested estimating was stupid. And so we were like, we scored badly every year, and we were fine with that, because it was a stupid way to teach estimation, and we didn't do it. So are there things that within there that we can pull out and say, we're not teaching it this way for a reason, and we can live with reasons that make sense. This is just a stupid way to do it, and we're not going to do it. And
Right.
okay.
I mean, I have an example right off the bat. 5th grade teaches volume. It's actually a big part. It's a bigger part of SBA testing than we realized it was originally. Like, as the test has evolved, we're noticing more and more volume questions on it. We teach volume later on in the year. Sometimes, I think last year they had just started their volume unit right before they took. So this year, part of our conversations as a 5th grade group with math, with Maureen and Jean and our ACES person is, do we want to move that unit around? Where does it make sense to put that volume unit? Because it also has to flow within the math that they're learning, right? So, I mean, that's just a quick example of something that we have noticed. Maureen, actually, I remember last year was like, oh my gosh, there were so many volume questions on there. Like, there was more than I remember ever being. So it's something that now we have to think about as a group and thinking about shifting our curriculum and calendar.
And I'll give you another example, and it happens to be 5th grade, and talking about nonfiction and making sure that our nonfiction work, the bulk is in the beginning of the school year and not towards the end of the school year. So those are the kinds of shifts in conversations, shifts in curriculum and the way it flows, and the scope and sequence of that we are having.
And I keep talking about how it goes all the way back down to kindergarten and 1st grade, because in math, that's where you're building all of your foundational skills. Over the summer, our 1st grade teachers got together and they did some math curriculum work with our ACES consultant, and they took a look at a unit that they had been teaching for a long time, and they looked at the Common Core standards, and they looked at what they currently had, or what they had been using, and they said, this is not nearly rigorous enough. So they jumped it up several levels of rigor, which I know, so we won't see the results of that work for another couple years, because those kids didn't get that. They'll get that this year, 1st graders, so in 2 more years that will have an impact on 2nd grade and then on 3rd grade. And so, but that's just another example of how in this curriculum revision process, we're finding places where we need to change what we have been doing, and the 1st grade teachers discovered that through this curriculum revision process, and they made changes, and they increased the rigor, and I mean, they themselves said, wow, like, we have to make this more challenging for our kids because we have to make sure we're aligned with the standards. So there's 2 examples. I had 2
And in
examples.
all those evaluations, we're looking at the whole child again, and we're saying, these are the things that are they need to learn anyway.
Right.
They need to learn about volume. If
Right.
they need to learn it a little earlier in the year to help us out, and it doesn't
Right.
cause, it doesn't affect anything badly,
Right.
then that's a no-brainer.
Exactly.
If it isn't, then we have to say what makes the most sense for the kids, and this is a separate, this is something we acknowledge. And,
Right,
and
exactly.
we know, and we've done it deliberately and with our eyes wide open. So we just don't want to, like I said, it's not that we haven't spent a lot of time talking about these scores, but again, they're a score.
Right.
So, okay. Does anybody, oops, sorry. Todd?
Yeah, well, the verts are improving every year. And this is where going out and talking with
The
our,
what? The
the
vertical
vertical
scores.
scores
Oh.
are improving every year. And what this means is that the schools in our DERG as well as across the state, they may be improving more quickly. Going out and having conversations with other school districts is going to be crucial, and that will give you good information. Are they just trying to teach to the test, or are there methods that they're utilizing that are really going to be valuable for the for Beecher Road school students?
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
We have another presentation that we'll go to.
I know, so,
I
so.
move that we postpone it if that's what you're
I know.
Do you want to do it tonight?
It's up to the
How long
board.
is the presentation, Jeannie, if you think you? if you
I
want to
can
do
go
that?
through this in 10 minutes or less.
If we just shut our mouths and listen,
Let me put
I can't guarantee
that doesn't happen. I know, it doesn't. Then I
Hard
asked a
time
stupid
promising
question
that.
apparently. Oh, okay, so,
I mean, if.
no, we're just looking at the time and I'm sorry that, you have to
Nope.
go next. All right,
So while Lisa gets it all set.
okay.
For some of you, this may be a little bit familiar, and for some of you, this is brand new. So. It should have been in present mode already.
It is
Okay. Do you have a, do
doing something funny. I hit the AV mute button. AV.
you want me to put it back on?
Yeah, you're good.
It's doing something funny, that's what my computer's been kind of doing all day today. So, again, thank you for the opportunity to share this overview. Again, for some of you, this may be a little bit familiar, but for some of you, this is brand new. What this plan represents is a collaboration between the administration and teachers within the district, and they form the Professional Development Education Committee.
Want me to go? It might
It
not.
does.
Try
It's
turning
not
it off
working
and on.
I'm gonna go off and on again and try that. Let's see if that works. I said 10 minutes or less, now it's making a liar of me. Okay, here's your clicker. It doesn't work. It did.
Is this one of those things if you touch it?
Nope.
Because sometimes that works.
It's doing.
Vanna.
Broke my clicker.
She's like 60.
Do that from there.
Yep.
Oh, you got it.
Yeah, we're gonna go from the bottom. So, where do we keep, it's working now? Thanks. Where do we keep all this information? We do use the data management system. It was formerly known as Bloomboard, it is now EdReflect, but it is where we keep all of our observation information and all the teachers input all their goal information and where all the ratings are. So annually, what do we do every year? We have an orientation for the faculty that has to be completed by September 30th. Tomorrow's faculty meeting is our kind of refresher overview, going over the components of the plan, what people have to do, by what dates, that, all of that information. And our new teachers get a more detailed understanding of what their plan actually is. For everybody else, part of the plan is to refresh every year. So this also gets reviewed by our committee each year. And PDEC, as our Professional Development Education Committee, is well known. Our PDEC committee, aside from a few shifts in membership, they are the group of folks that originally wrote this plan and then did the revision back in April of 2015, I believe I have it in front, 2015. We actually met today because not only is this group responsible for reviewing this plan each year, but they are also the group that is responsible for helping to plan all of our professional learning. And many of you have heard me talk about our professional learning days. This group meets voluntarily in the summer and we look across the year. It's a well-established group of volunteers that meet before and after school to do this. Again, we met today to do make our plan for our thorough review of this evaluation plan for the year. And if there are any changes to the plan that we'd like to propose, at a later date, we will bring that to the board and for your approval. So I'll kind of just take a look at what's listed are the components of the plan. It's comprised of all of these, and every educator has an opportunity for dialogue surrounding their goals and surrounding performance and practice. These conversations occur at a minimum in the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and the end of the year regarding their goals, before and after all formal observations. And so dialogue about teaching and learning is not limited to those times, but those are the required times for the plan. And I will go into more detail about each component as we go through. The first component are the conferences. So by October 30th, all teachers will have their beginning of the year goal conference. So that means that each of us administrators meet with our teachers that we supervise. They have had by that time an opportunity to look at data from the previous year that the students came with, and the beginning of the year data. They set their targets around whatever our district priorities are, whatever our goals are, based on the students they have in front of them. We meet with those teachers again mid-year to review the data. They bring us evidence of what's been happening. They bring us, achievement scores based on what they're working on. They also do a mid-year reflection. We provide feedback, we provide some next steps, and then again at the end of the year that some of the data is then reviewed. We look at, did teachers meet their targets? What were any circumstances around that? We talk about feedback, and the data is always based on student achievement, as well as that summative component is also around their performance and practice, and I'll talk a little bit about that. There is an end-of-year reflection that the teachers do. It's a pretty intense one, and teachers take it very seriously. They look at their own work, they look at the growth, and we talk about what next steps might be, what was successful, and what might be areas to work on. So actual goal setting, student learning objectives as they're called. The plan has multiple components. One is 45% of their evaluation. It is the student goal setting, again, based on district priorities. And when a teacher sets their student learning objective, it is not around a single assessment. Half of that 45% is mandated to be a standardized assessment. Currently, for our classroom teachers, we use STAR. That, because we made a decision long ago before the state said it was allowed that we would not use Smarter Balance. We wanted something continuous all the way through our grades. So teachers set that plan. The other 22.5% can be a variety of indicators. It could be some portfolios that they collect around student work. It can be our own internal assessments, performance tasks. An example of that might be grade 6, over the last few years, looking at some problem solving, looked at things such as communication and representation of their ability to solve problems. They had a baseline score, they worked at students and in 4 areas, and there were levels such as novice, practitioner, and how did students move through those levels, and where did they start and where did they end. So that's something that would be an example of a non-standardized assessment for students student learning objectives. The other 10% that we are looking at here is around the parent feedback goal. And that is based on the survey data that we collect. And jointly as administrators, we work with the teachers on that. Whatever their goal is similar to our goal this year. That goal will be around communication again. We have had in the last survey, a 90% favorable response around communication. That sounds great, but we always want to improve that. So we are looking to increase that to 92. Doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're talking 90, to move that needle is not always that easy. But the administrators are doing our part by, my principal's message, the increased communication through the SWIFT K-12. That's another method that we are doing to increase our communication about what's happening at Beecher. What teachers can do, their newsletters, their phone calls, emails, how are they talking to the parents? How often are they talking? And they would bring evidence to show what it is that they are doing to contribute to us improving in that area of communication. And that would also lead us to have a survey every year rather than every other year. So what does performance and practice mean? So performance and practice is 40% of a teacher's summative rating. And that is a combination of formal and informal classroom observations, as well as what we'll call a review of practice. So a formal observation includes a pre-conference with the teacher where they share a detailed lesson plan. Then a classroom observation, about a 40 to 45 minute observation where the administrator scripts or takes very detailed notes during that time. The administrator then goes in the performance and practice area. There are 4 domains, 3 indicators in each domain. All of the evidence that's collected is then tagged, so to speak, to indicators. So in a 40 to 45 minute lesson, I might have 130 pieces of evidence that I then go through that whole script, or Lisa or Cheryl, same thing, and tag each piece of evidence to an indicator. So that's what happens after we leave. We then meet with the teacher. They have done their reflection on the lesson. We share all of that evidence, and during the post-conference, we talk about the strengths of the lesson. We talk about what are next steps. The state requires a minimum of one formal observation every 3 years. At Beecher, we have it on a rotation, it's every other year. So we are a little bit more than what the state requires. An informal observation is an unannounced, approximately about 20 minutes. So what we would do there is we'd go into the classroom, we'd spend about 20 minutes, same process, script or detailed notes, tag all of that evidence, share that out with the teacher, all electronically, write down written direct feedback. Verbal feedback is also an option, but there must be written direct feedback for every one of those observations. And that can include some next steps too. A review of practice is also considered an informal observation. So the review of practice is something that is non-direct instruction. An example of that would be a teacher's reporting out at a 504 meeting or a PPT, or something that they planned a family event, parent-student book club, and we sat in either on the planning component or on the execution of that. Could be a concert, could be planning Arts Week, something that is not direct instruction, but that contributes to the whole of the school. And part of our plan is that every teacher has 3 informal observations, one of which must be a review of practice. So for some of our teachers who work with adults, sometimes a little more than they maybe are specialists who do some coaching, they may have 2, but at minimum, everyone must have 1 review of practice within their 3 informal observations. Another part of our plan is that following the informal observations, an administrator or a teacher may request a formal. Even if that person is not on the rotation for a formal observation that year, based on what we see, or based on what the teacher needs, they may say, can you come and do a formal so I can do from beginning to end, the planning, the lesson, and the after. So there's a few things to add here. Teachers in their first 4 years of teaching must have, according to our plan, 3 formal observations every year, plus their 3 informals. Teachers who are experienced but new to Beecher, for the first 2 years, must have 3 formals plus 3 informals. So that's just a little variation on that. Based on the survey data, our own plan as administrators is, and the teachers are asking for it, to provide some more feedback to them. Oh boy, what just happened? I went to sleep. I'm talking too long. So, I need help. Oh, there we go. It's there, but it's not on yours. It's coming. So, based on the request of teachers, so there was that they were requesting more feedback. Beginning of this school year, we asked another 2-question kind of survey to them to give us a little more information about how they wanted that feedback. What kind of feedback did they want? So we have created our own goal with some data collection about informally, aside from these required touches, so to speak, how are we offering feedback to teachers? How often are we do that? So our own data collection of either is it written, is it verbal, how, and collecting how often we're in classrooms and what classrooms we're in. So we are doing that as our own kind of goal this year so that we can, spend more time looking at the teaching and learning, which is what we really need to be doing, and give the teachers what they want, which is a little bit more feedback. This whole school indicator comes right out of the state accountability plan. Wherever we land is what the teachers get as their 5%, and there's not really, so it's kind of reciprocal. As long as the teachers do well, the students do well, then the teachers do well. So if we are rated really high, it means the teachers have done well, and the students have performed well, hence we're rated really high.
But isn't this indicator affected by participation rates, chronic absenteeism?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's really, it's not.
Not solely about performance.
Right, it's not scores on academic learning or other learning.
It is,
Well, it
but
is, yes.
it's got the other components as well.
Okay.
So that's the final 5%. So there are 4 kind of levels, so to speak, and we do submit that in a report to the state. You see the 4 there. Within each, as I mentioned, within each component, everybody has strengths. Everybody has areas to improve. The summative rating is an overall picture. We look deeper than just what that summative overall score is out of those 45, 10, 5, and 40%. So at Beecher, our ratings overall, 35 teachers received the overall rating of proficient and 40 received the exemplary. So the individual work that we do with teachers on very specific areas of improvement comes through ongoing conversation. The process is supported by our professional development, both external and internal. Again, an example of this could be a teacher may be very successful at laying out a plan, but the transitions in their classroom, maybe they need some work there. So in order to execute that plan. So that's what would be an indicator out of the 12 indicators that we work in, could be that's where we're looking to improve. Let's look at strategies for improving your transitions to take less time so that you can then execute the plan that you have laid out. Does that make sense? Okay. So I've got some final thoughts. I will say a lot of words, there aren't many on this page. So the pros to a plan such as this is really sharing strategies and ideas with teachers, having these conversations, looking at a newer teacher who looks at you and says, I really want to try this. I know that you're coming in to observe, and I don't know if it's going to go great. And at Beecher, we have the ability to say, try it. We'll come in, we'll give you feedback. If it falls flat, you get to try something else. So I think that that's one of the great things about this here at Beecher and these relationships that we build with teachers. I will say the cons, we are a large place. As administrators, we share the responsibility of supervision. Cheryl evaluates all the special services staff. Lisa and I share the remaining. We alternate grades and specialists to make sure that we are having an opportunity to see all teachers, observe, and evaluate over time everybody. For Lisa and I, this means that we evaluate at least 30 members of the faculty. At minimum, that's 3 conferences each around the goals, and multiple components of the formal observation, the pre, the observation, the post, the write-up. And then we also have the 3 informal observations of each of those teachers on our caseload. We are really committed to having this be a really valuable process, but keeping in mind that it is at least 90 conferences and 90 informals. There's your first 180 days, and that's 180 touches in 180 days, and we haven't even factored in the formal observations, which is another at least 50 touches for us. So we believe very strongly in our role as administrators in the teaching and learning process. That is one of the reasons why we've, aside from this, tried to put on outside providing more feedback to teachers through the not part of the evaluation plan. But we really anticipate that this has to be our priority. This really does. So Lisa mentioned some things that we are doing. There's no more slides, we're good. As Lisa mentioned, we did some things to try to put this as our priority. Another classroom that we've developed, another support staff that we've developed, and again, our own goals. But just wanted to kind of frame it in perspective. You're looking, 240, 250 touches in 180 days, and it is one thing that we do, but we feel like it's the most important thing, one of the most important things that we do.
And I think...
How'd I do, Steve, 10 minutes or less?
Oh.
Not bad.
And I think one of the things that we, kind of talked about is the ratio of administrators or evaluators to staff. Beecher is way higher than anybody else in our DIR, and we're looking at some of those numbers and saying, this is the minimum you're trying to do, and it is, it's not reasonable. If Carl were here, he'd be talking about how many people.
I remember this.
Yeah.
So the summit,
Go ahead. No, I'm done.
the summative ratings, do we see that?
Does who see it?
Does the board see that?
The board can know the aggregate number, but they can't know you know.
I know we can't know individuals,
Right.
but do we get, I don't remember seeing the summative report that says, like, how many of our teachers are rated at,
You don't get that report unless you ask for it, or like if you ask for the teacher evaluation plan to be presented to you, that kind of a thing. We report it to the state every year, but it doesn't have to be signed up by the board chair or anything like that, if that's what you're referring to.
But you just
But
told
I'm
us
saying we
tonight.
I just told you tonight what they were,
35 is proficient, 40
Oh, yeah, she
people
said
are
that,
exemplary,
right.
so, okay, yeah.
then
But
that
otherwise,
makes-
we haven't heard those numbers.
Yeah.
Which was one of the reasons why we asked for
Yeah.
those numbers tonight.
Does that
But
answer your
I
question,
do
Steve?
think, as long as we're,
And then, so then there's 25% between below standard and developing. Can you tell us that breakdown?
there aren't any. Those
There
are
are
all of our
no,
teachers.
those are not
Teacher
percentages, those are numbers.
Those are
Oh,
numbers.
they're hard numbers.
Hard
Yeah.
numbers.
They're hard
Got it.
numbers.
Yeah,
We have
that's
to submit it
everybody.
in hard numbers.
That's everybody.
Yep, we have
Yeah.
to submit it in hard numbers.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we submit it by September 15th every year. 15th, I think I'm right on that date.
Mhm. Correct.
So again,
Thank you.
yeah, okay.
I guess it's,
But again, as we're talking about the budget, again, we've acknowledged this is not necessarily a manageable situation. And the survey was very clear about the need for additional feedback, or different feedback, and I know we have the formal plan, and then, we have other things. So this is your highest priority. This is, being in the classroom, looking at what people are doing. It's certainly a priority, I think, from our perspective as well. So if, there is a resource issue, we recognize that, and we're looking for a recommendation on how to fix that. So,
Even the fact that Janet is leading the PDEP committee that she spoke about that after school today, that would typically, in a district where there's multiple schools, be a committee that's a district committee that's led by let's say an assistant superintendent or a curriculum director. That's usually the kind of role that is usually leading that kind of a, not that she does a bang-up job, and she co-leads it with our union president, which is, because there's teacher representation on that committee as well. But just another example of what I think you're saying, Margaret, the district that,
right, and I think,
has multiple
Okay.
roles for people.
okay, we're apparently done.
We're gonna move on. We got it.
Okay, where are we in the agenda?
Upcoming
Teacher evaluation.
presentations.
Okay. Summer programs, again, I don't, does anybody have any specific needs on summer programs in terms of what you're looking for? We saw it in finance, we broke even on summer programs. In fact, we're a little ahead, which is great.
A short presentation that would sort of emulate past presentations. It just pretty much gives you the numbers and, participation in the monetary part.
And again, just any recommendations for change. If there's anything that, occurred to people during the summer about how you make it different in terms of, the classes offered, the length of the program, any of that would be good to hear. So really, a little bit of status, but more, what will we do differently? Lynn, did you have something?
No.
Okay. All right, then structures to promote student engagement. That's, does everybody know what that is?
I'm very
No.
excited it's on the agenda.
Yeah. That is a discussion of, well,
We talked a little about,
Yeah.
what are the structures for, like, say, recess or breaks? Some of those things are very standardized within a grade level, but then there's some that are more situational or more at the moment. So, I think that's kind of where that conversation at the board retreat sort of, I believe, played out a little bit, or prior to the board retreat. So,
and I think the goal here was to get some actual facts about time, outside, time inside, when, like we all think we know, like when you can't go outside, but, it's all kind of anecdotal about what we all think happens in terms of outside time, inside physical time, I can't remember what somebody called it before.
movement
Movement.
breaks, out, yeah.
There you go.
yeah.
So really, I think in this part, we're just looking for the facts, because we don't know exactly what happens by grade. So if we could get the facts, and then I don't know if anybody else has any other expectations. Mine was mostly what's going on now.
Right. I guess I'm also just curious, within that, where does this fall within the framework of responsive classroom? Is it kind of, is there a research backing to it in terms of recognizing how important this is for students to be able to engage, is to also have these breaks in between and that kind of thing. And just curious what kind of framework framework is behind the thought of why we have what we have. If there is one, which there may not be, because there probably isn't in most schools, so.
Did anybody have anything else that they were looking for in this? Again, this is kind of our starting point. So we're looking for what exactly happens and, what would cause it to change? And are there any exceptions, where if you're naughty, you don't get to go out or whatever. It's been a while. And then the strategic plan update, we're moving.
We're moving that.
Yeah,
We have a couple of additions now, so there's the capital budget proposal,
okay.
the Sustainability Committee charge scope timeframe, and curriculum committee overview.
Okay. The capital budget, that's,
Budget's the
the
budget.
budget's budget. Curriculum, I think, we're just looking for, what's a little bit about, what you've been doing, where you're going, kind of what we're trying to do within the committee, just to give everybody who doesn't attend, those meetings an idea. And the agenda for all those meetings is always published ahead of time. So anytime somebody wants to attend, a meeting, and Lynn keeps us, updated about what's coming up next, I think.
And we include the minutes from the meetings in the board packet.
Yeah,
And
so it's just,
there will be a meeting on Thursday, so if anyone
So-
wants to come and add.
Potentially topics that we might cover during the course of the year, and
Right.
are we also talking, would you actually, is that the place where you'd like to actually infuse in a curriculum update from the summer curriculum projects? Or would you rather wait for the strategic plan? Because that will have more than that, obviously.
Do it in the strategic plan.
yeah, I do it in the
Not during this
strategic.
one,
yeah.
okay, this will be
Yeah.
more than the,
This is more, I think, we're asking for the committee chairs to
Sure.
kind of
Yep.
do some work, or summarize.
gotcha.
Yeah, because Lynn's so lazy. All right, so we moved up capital budget, we moved up curriculum,
Ad hoc sustainability.
yeah, ad hoc sustainability. So charge, scope, and timeframe. I don't know,
I thought we were leaving that for
No,
November.
we said we move it up,
we said we'd move it up,
because there's a,
because there's an
Compost
October
day.
6th activity
we
in
get people
town
fired up based on
that we're
Okay.
looking at.
Okay, great.
So one thing we would be bringing to you, would we work in conjunction with you, would be to actually have something similar to the ad hoc enrichment, where we actually had, what's the membership, what's, the time frame, what's, what's the charge, right?
I'm happy to help develop that or give some ideas now, whatever
Okay,
is best.
all right. So does anybody have, if Claire and Bob and I work on that, does anybody else want to? No? Okay, all right. So,
Have at it.
all right. And we're going to go very, very quickly through the facilities report, or the other reports. Facilities, we're not going to talk
There's
about.
no meeting.
Okay,
Meeting
finance.
on next Monday.
Monday.
Yeah,
Right.
Monday the 24th. Steve, we have a motion.
Right. So we actually went over this briefly at the last board meeting, but we didn't have a quorum to vote on it. At the end of the budget year, we do a one-time line item transfer where we move things that were under budget, things that were over budget. We made these decisions during the year, but we don't do the adjusting of the budget until the final year end when we have all the numbers in and everything's encumbered. So it's a document that basically runs through every line item in the budget, where we move money, and so we need a move approval on that.
So I'll move that we authorize the line item transfers in the 2017-18 budget as presented by administration. And everybody has that document. It's- Second?
Second?
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, great. Okay, curriculum.
Meeting on Thursday,
Yep.
4:30, district office.
Okay.
World languages is on the agenda.
Policy committee,
Has not met.
right, and you gave us a little update on what our expectations are this year. ACES, nope. CABE liaison.
Yes, very quick. The Cape Caps Conference, I encourage people to attend. We're in the middle of applying for our award, and if people, we all need to go through trainings and stuff as well to kind of be able to continue with the leadership award. So I want to encourage folks, since that's one of our goals, to attend trainings. I hope folks will consider consider the Cape Caps Conference. And one quick webinar coming up is the K through 12 cybersecurity, what's at risk? And I think everybody got that email, but just pointing that out, it's this Wednesday, it's a quick webinar, so if anyone's interested in that.
And hopefully, if people were intending to go to the Cape Conference, they've already told Marcia, since we're past the
Registry.
early bird
Early
discount.
bird, yeah, it's still
Early bird.
possible, but it
Right,
will cost more money.
But it'll cost more for the district to send us, so hopefully everybody's already done that. And now we're on new business, the primary mental health grant.
Move that we approve the 2018-19 primary mental health grant for submission to the Connecticut State Department of Education.
Go ahead, no worries.
We do this every year.
We do this
Yeah.
every year, it is the same information every year. Does anybody have any discussion or questions about this? Okay, all those in favor? All right, and then the bus contract, termination contract award, again, I think
We
this was.
discussed
That
this
was
at the
yeah.
last meeting, we just didn't
Yeah.
have quorum to vote
Okay.
on it, so move that we accept the termination of contract from Dorothy McCrum and award the remainder of that transportation contract to B&B Transportation.
Can I just ask a question? I vaguely recall that's just for 1 year and then,
No, Dottie's retiring.
right, but the B&B transportation contract, when will that be up again?
2020. All of our contracts are up in 2020.
Just
So
for
the
remainder.
last time there was a change, it was awarded to
Sorensen.
Sorensen, and so this time, we're awarding the change to,
Got it, okay.
okay.
Through a bid-
Did we get a,
through a
we got a
process.
second, right? We've got a couple of them?
No, we didn't.
No,
Oh,
This one yet.
Oh, no, Steve said it.
I said
I
it.
thought, Lynn, did you second?
No, I didn't.
I thought that was the mental health grant.
All right, well, why doesn't somebody go ahead and
Well,
second?
someone second.
I'll second it. Oh, you'll second it, Claire, all right. Any discussion on this?
No, I guess not.
No?
Fine.
Okay,
Do
all
you
those in
have a
favor?
question?
No, I was just curious, that I don't remember the note that we had attached this time being presented to us last time, right? That was new?
The letter?
The letter
The
that's
actual
in here?
letter?
No.
Oh,
Yeah, it was presented.
Yes.
Was it last time? Okay,
Yeah.
I don't know why I don't recall that for some reason. Lots happened in the month, I guess, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does it say something of concern?
Well, no, not of concern, but just curious as to what her recommendation was, but I understand why we're choosing the path that we're
So
choosing.
we made it clear the last time this happened,
Yeah,
that the job of our administration is to select it. It is not the job of
Right.
bus drivers to decide who gets their contract. That would
Right.
be a bad precedent to set.
In short, if it was a family member, there would be a different set of circumstances. But we did a clear cut both 2 years ago and this time a bid process, not about money, but about service and about other factors. So
Right.
we tried to keep it very, by very strict criteria and weighing the evidence that both of them provided. So, yeah.
Okay, any additional discussion? All those in favor? Okay,
I'm abstaining.
okay. All right, where's my agenda? Okay, public comment, and I forgot to ask the person that didn't come to make public comment.
I don't think so. He hadn't signed up.
Let's
Oh.
check. Hold on, let's just check.
You just will.
No.
Now, okay, all right. All right, we just need a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
I.
All right, thank you all, thank you very much.